Welcome to the Sunday Truth Talk here on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube simultaneously. My name is Jona Bryndis. I'm airing out of Florida, my healing tent here. I'm a professional energy healer and energy coach, and every Sunday morning I want to talk to you about truth. For this week, I want to talk about soulfulness, and this also reflects on the energies here that are coming in this next week. So instead of those energy updates that I used to do for years, I'm now doing these truth talks. So what does soulfulness mean, and how does this relate to these current collective energies? This is what I'm here for. This is what I want to address with you guys, and I hope that I have access to your live chats. I see some of you have to give me a little bit, or be a little bit patient with me here, because I'm dealing with technology. Oh, there you go. So I have to juggle these three platforms, and I'm not quite sure yet if I have your guys' questions up on my screen yet. So bear with me here. Thank you all for coming. It's a wonderful Sunday morning. And this whole week was kind of weird, wasn't it, for you as well? It was very slow. It felt like Groundhog Day. A lot of you guys said Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day is probably the best description of how we perceive time. What is this? All right, what is going on here? Okay, so in these times of transformation, we've talked about this at length. What happens is that everything speeds up. And if you are one of those who have been focusing on your inner growth, on mindfulness, and seeing yourself as the true self, for you, something new is going to happen now. And this is quite surprising for many of you, because we are all in this perception of like, oh, the world is going down the drainer and people are all dark and so forth. But really what is happening here is that we are beginning to see a new truth. And in that, we are actually slowing down. So our perception of time, and this is what I want to talk to you today, is actually something that we can manipulate, that we can control, we can manage that. And the more aware we become, the better energy managers we become, the more control we will feel about how we perceive time and how much time we have and what we can do with this time. So instead of being focused on performing, effectiveness, doing harder, more, in order to not feel this pain of not being good enough, or not being fast enough, or not being able to catch up with all the stuff that is going on and feeling overwhelmed, we need to learn how to slow down. And slowing down is the theme here, okay, for these incoming energies. And I want to make sure you understand this correctly, because slowing down does not mean laying back on your couch, eating the bag of chips or the gallon of ice cream and watching Netflix, or checking out, or not facing things. On the contrary, that's called stagnation. That's called going back into your comfort zone. That's called fixating on the things that make you feel good about yourself, okay? And wanting to feel good about yourself, you need to understand this is, valid. It's something that makes you feel you can be you, and ultimately it allows you to love yourself more. But what happens when you actually check out, and this actually applies to, any type of checking out, okay? Any type of unhealthy self-soothing, whether it be fixating on your career, fixating on how your mind sees things, or fixating on, serving other people, or being the super mom, or being, the best in the field that you work in, and so forth. All that does, though, is reinforcing this feeling of not being good enough, of having to try harder, because you allowed this fixation to determine your timing, to determine the context in which you see everything that is happening around you, and also how it makes you feel. And this is the big, big problem right now. While you can observe all these people going into complete confusion and overwhelm. What do you think is that? Why do you think people are so confused right now? It's because they don't know who they truly are. They have believed in this, whatever their mind fixated on, whatever, their identity was tied to. They've externalized their thoughts, their emotions to other people or to politics or to news or to any kind of sort of authority outside of ourselves that told us or is trying to tell us how to feel and how to be. And this is basically what, soulfulness is not. Okay? Soulfulness is also not going into the deep, dark night of the soul and wallowing in your soul pain. Wallowing in the fact that you can feel your soul, you can connect with your true self, but you feel the restriction of being in this 3D body. That's not soulfulness, guys. That's a fixation on your pain. That's a fixation on the past. And this is now here where all of this comes together. All right, when we look at our perception of time, this is typically the way we perceive this subjectively. How we perceive time shows us how well we are connected within or not. Because if we experience time as just sort of zooming by and we are not even participating in what is going on, that means that our attention and our intention is somewhere else. It means that we are not actually in the now. And being in the now, guys, is the only time where you could actually change something. So if you experience soul pain because you don't agree with your circumstances or with your past, with your childhood, with the things that you are perceiving here sort of in this ego self, right? If you're not agreeing with that, that's fine. That's being honest with yourself. That's being truthful to yourself. That's saying, okay, I see what it is and I don't like it. All right. But not really facing it and, making it something and then fixating on that. That is not actually dealing with it. That is, using it as a justification, as a rationalization, as a reason, a cause, okay, why you are feeling bad. And if you want to change something about feeling bad, all right, so this is old saying, pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice, all right? If you choose to no longer suffer from whatever your pain is, then the only time where you can change this is in the now. So your attention needs to go into the now. Your commitment needs to go into the now. Your accountability needs to go into the now. Your responsibility needs to go into the now. Your integrity needs to be in the now. It's this fixation on the past, and this is where most of us actually have the biggest issues in walking the talk, all right? We separate all these things out, all right? We intellectually understand what all this transformation and growth and soul growth and true self and enlightenment and what all that means. But we haven't really internalized, aka fully experienced what that means. It means to be bone-crushing honest with yourself. It means to be in self-reflection about your other parts, okay? About your darkness, for instance, we talked about this, or your pain, or your fear, all these things that are so difficult to face. But being, sitting in it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to wallow in it and that you have to fixate it and that you have to use this as a justification why you're feeling so bad. You see the trap there? That's an ego trap, guys. It means that you can see it for what it is. And right now, commit to yourself that you don't want this anymore. All right, right now, decide that no matter what it is and no matter what caused all this, all right, that this is no longer how you want this in your future. Okay, so soulfulness is connected to our time perception in the sense that we recognize that on this higher dimensional level of our soul, all right, that we are existing in our past and our present and our future at the same time, all right? And that means if we want to change something, we have to change the energy of how we look at what we are experiencing or what we have experienced. And focus on that. Focus on shifting our energy. Focus on becoming a good energy manager, not becoming a better codependency manager or time manager or all these things have to do with this, and we have to, juggle, our physical well-being, our emotional well-being, our mental well-being, our spiritual well-being with our energetic well-being. Of course, this is a lot. For this week, okay, the main tip here for you is to arrive in the now. And what does arriving in the now actually mean? It means that you actually know what you are focusing on. Okay, so this is the kind of self-reflection that I'm referring to. Not, monitoring, judging, sort of super egoing you or super parenting you, but witnessing yourself. Okay, my emotions are going into anger right now. I feel anger in me. Okay. Then you ask yourself, well, what's underneath that? Is there maybe something that I need right now that I'm not getting? Is there something that I was expecting from somebody else that this person isn't willing to give me? Is there something that I'm convinced of, that, I want to be right about, but the other person doesn't want to see this? Is there something, that I need to prove here, and other people are not hearing me or they don't want to validate me? Do you see? All that has nothing to do with who you are. All that is just what you think or what your mind, your ego mind thinks you need to fixate on, as opposed to taking this like quarters of a second, okay, and remind yourself of taking a deep, deep breath, because that's the fastest way to really arrive in the now. And you guys know me, I'm very outspoken about some things. Squeezing your butt cheeks also helps you to arrive in the now. It's an extremely simple first chakra exercise. Okay, this is where you are. This is when you know that you are here. Okay, you're here, and you breathe, and you feel into what you're truly feeling, not what you're thinking. You can, if you are becoming a good energy manager with training, you can become really good at this. You learn to discern. You learn to discern between your sensations and your feelings and your emotions and your thoughts. But until you're there, I can guarantee you that you are not aware of what you're truly feeling. All you are sensing, okay, is either, how your body feels, how your life force, translates into your physical 3D, and maybe how this affects your emotions. Yes, and Grace Denise, you are very accurate here. It feels like a rewiring opportunity, and this is exactly what it is. It is a restructuring, a reconditioning that is happening within us right now. That's exactly what is happening, and this is why, I want to use these opportunities here on Sundays to talk to you directly about this. I'd love to talk to you about these things that are going on inside of you and how to contextualize them better, what it means, what you're actually being asked to recondition, to rewire. Overall, collectively, we are in this time of new power structures, and we talked about this at length. Our political system, our social system, the system of business making, all that was based on a certain paradigm of materialism, and that is now transforming into a paradigm of more truth, all right, whether we are ready or not. Okay, you can see this in news. There's plenty of news out there, plenty of truth being revealed. I just want to make an example here that always sort of reminds me of how difficult it is to actually internalize truth. 30 years ago, 35 years ago, when I was talking about, 30 years ago, I was talking about nutrition, and I was talking about, how, sort of the biochemical contamination that we get through the food industry, and how, staying with most natural, unprocessed foods is the healthiest way of living. It doesn't matter, sort of what kind of other preferences you have, but to stay with things as natural as possible, because the food industry doesn't actually have your best interest in mind, okay? And this is 30 years ago, and people looked at me like a conspiracy theorist. And over these 30 years, proof after proof after proof. I mean, I was coming to that conclusion 30 years ago based on reading studies, okay? Not on my intuitive feeling, okay? And for me, this was a truth back then that had to be faced, all right? I had to integrate that. I had to be practical about this. Knowing this alone is not enough. I needed to do something about this. So I was talking about those things to people. And after 30 years, of more and more studies proving all of that over and over and over again, it's almost boring for me, because and people still look at me like a conspiracy theorist when I talk about, like how you need to avoid, certain things such as artificial sweeteners or colorants, or, like just a sort of the, from my perspective, normal contamination through the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry, right? How you need to avoid all that. And they still look at me like it's a surprise. How is that a surprise, guys? How is it a surprise that power has been misused in politics, in business, no matter where you look, in finances? How can this be something that you're just now discovering? It's been written all over the place. In fact, one of the biggest issues here is our perception again. We've perceived this as normal and therefore accepted it as normal. This is not truthfulness, okay? Truthfulness means to recognize the truth of things. And when I say accepting the things, the way things are, I don't mean accepting the darkness or the negativity or the harmfulness of things and sucking it up. I'm talking about recognizing that this is what your conditions are. Okay, if you grew up in a dysfunctional family, if you grew up in a country, that does a lot of environmental crimes, if you grew up in a relationship or, whatever, that brought in certain challenges for you, I'm not saying to suck this up. I'm saying accept that this is the condition that you're in. And now what? This is now the part where you actually become true with yourself. That is okay. Then if that is the case, all right, instead of focusing all my energy onto like, oh, this caused this, and this is by my mom's fault, and this is my dad's fault, and this is, because of the country that I'm born in, because of the skin color that I have, and because of the gender that I have. Okay, you're doing what? You're externalizing your power to make changes right there. You fixate on the causation or on the conditions themselves. When I say accept things the way they are, I mean let go of fixating, of trying to explain it, or use it as justification for what? For what? That you are unhealthy, that you are doing things to others that do harm to others, that you can be non-integrous as well, that you can exploit other people. Is that what you're actually doing there? You using that causation? Think about this. This is what the ego does. To what? Continue darkness by fixating on what caused darkness in you? It is irrelevant, guys. What has caused this? The only thing that ever matters is that you understand that you are accountable for this right now, right this second. Right this second, you are accountable for what you put out in this world and what you allow into your own system, be it your body, through your food, through the air that you breathe, through, your exercise habits, and all the other habits that you have, into your emotions, okay? by fixating on certain things, by allowing yourself to feel justified and to wallow in things in your mind, to fixate on being right, to fixate on, sort of the linearity of things. Okay, yeah, because of that, then that. Okay, don't you see how all that just leads you back into the past? How all that fixates you away from the one moment where you actually could make a change. And that is in the now. So let's talk about that instead. Let's talk about how we can overcome the pain of the past, our conditions, the circumstances that we are in, and all these things that have led to, where we are right now. Where are you guys right now? What is your condition right now? And how do you want to change this? Who are you right now? That is worth a contemplation. That is worth self-reflection. How do you truly feel right now? And what are the things that you want to change? When you put yourselves into the truth, and truth, guys, is the same as light. When you put yourself into the light of your own truth, all right, what do you see? Do you see an inner child that is trapped in, the things that it didn't get, or that didn't go the way it wanted to, or that isn't willing to let go of her hopes and dreams from, 20, 30 years ago? Do you feel unheard, unvalidated, lonely, because people are not accepting you the way you are, or because they are on a different planet as far as their own self-growth and discovery is concerned? Do you see yourself as someone who is punished by God? Do you see yourself as a star seed, that is, sort of chosen to bring light into this world and healing to this world? And I know this is a very deep question, but look, guys, in the depths you will find the truth. Okay, you won't find it in the superficiality that the outside world presents to you. That is the distraction. That is, where your passivity comes in. That's where your stagnation comes in. You have to make an active step into your own inner truth. If you get too busy to live your life because you're too busy, following other people's dramas or following the news or whatever the weather condition is, okay, well, sorry, then you're not in your life. Then you've allowed something else to drive the bus, to run the show, to you've opened all doors and all windows for all kinds of energies and people and entities, yes, to come in and take over. Yes, that's exactly true. You have to align yourself to the new, right? You have to align yourself to the now and the future. Okay, so if you align yourself to your past, which is what most of you guys do, all right, then what new manifestations could you accept? Very few, right? You have to arrive in the truth of the now to make changes. And that means you have to let go of the pain of the past. All right, so that's the part here that you really need to internalize. Okay, and not knowing where you're at right now is basically like trying to type in the GPS of where you want to go into your phone without knowing where you're at. Okay, it doesn't matter where you want to go, where you want to be. It's just a fantasy if you don't know where you're at. And yes, to know where you're at depends on where you came from, but it's not relevant anymore because you're already here. Okay, this has already happened. This is already done. There's nothing you can do about that. What you can do, though, is change your attachment to the past by letting it go. And now focusing on the new. Focusing on what's ahead of you. And how do you do that? How can you fulfill, and here comes the more spiritual component of this truth talk here. How can you fulfill the promise that you've made to your soul self, to God, the universe, the source of all, to become the highest expression that you are? How can you fulfill that commitment, that promise? Because that's the only promise that ever matters, guys. Yes, we make commitments here in 3D, commitments to other people, commitments to our children, commitments to our partners, commitments to our jobs. Yes. But if, whatever we have committed ourselves to is no longer conducive for the expression of our higher self, all right? For growing into this sort of higher vibratory expression of who we are, the more integrous, the more truthful version of who we are, then it is your utmost responsibility to either change the commitment or to let go of the commitment. Okay. When it comes to children, obviously, as parents, we make a commitment that is about, 15, 20 years. Okay. They will always be our children and we will always love them as such. But as far as the commitment to, keep them safe, feed them, and provide the best circumstances, the best conditions that we can for them to grow, that ends at a certain point. Okay, we need to allow them to develop their own identity. And the same thing happens with our relationships too, guys. I mean, yes, we get married or we have a long-term relationship and we discuss all these, future things and where we want to be. But ultimately, it's the commitment to growing, okay, that is the only commitment that you will ever be held accountable for on a soul level. And if you want to have a conscious relationship, and if you want a relationship that can, grow optimally according to both the true selves that you are, okay, then your relationship needs to allow that, and your relationship also needs to reflect this. The integrity of your relationship then is not about how much money each of us brings to the table, or how much work we do, or how much we sacrifice, or how there's a lot of different aspects that you can discuss. I don't want to mention things that that you might prefer. You can negotiate these rules of engagement, as I call them, what you are committing to. This is up to your preferences. But there's one thing that is the same for all of us, guys, and that is growth, evolution. Okay, that is something we cannot stop. We cannot stop ourselves from evolving, because that is part of our divine nature. That is basically the divine spark in us that makes us grow, that makes us expand, that wants us to go into the higher expression of things, the higher expression of ourselves. So if you get yourself, your ego self, out of the way, you know what's going to happen? You're actually going to grow without having to do anything, because that is the true divine nature of everything. Look outside, look at the planet, even though there's a lot of problems with the planet right now. But look at the one flower, on your kitchen window. Okay, it will grow regardless. And people will have children regardless. We will go into this part of our divine nature regardless, because that is the life force that comes through us, that makes us evolve, that makes us grow. So the only commitment, the only promise you will ever be held to fulfill is the promise to your own soul self, and with it, basically the source, the divine, the universe, to become the best expression you can be here in this 3D life. And that is then what defines soulfulness. Soulfulness is a word that is often associated with either music, obviously, but also with a kind of spirituality that is maybe religious, or that comes from this sort of being consumed by your soul. Okay, there's you can feel that there's a lot of ambiguity in this, because and contradictions, because we are, after all, here in this 3D. Okay, this is the first and densest reality that we wake up in every day, regardless of whether we like this 3D reality or not. Okay, we have to heed that, yes, but we are not a body with a soul. We are a soul with a body. That means that our soul is sort of the conductor of all of this, all right? And we have this body here to bring all this into expression. We have emotions, we have thoughts, we have relationships. And then we have this true self in us, all right, that mediates between our soul self and our ego self, that comes in with these promptings and synchronicities and inner guidance and all these things that you guys feel every day, okay? These are messages from your soul. This is your soul speaking to you. But because the vibration of your soul, the vibrational level of your soul is so way up there, or not up actually, but you know what I mean? It's such a high vibratory realm. It cannot really be translated by this relatively reduced linear 3D entity, your body, mind, and emotions. All right, it needs to be translated. It needs to be transcoded down. That's where the word transcodes comes from, by the way. It's our true self that transcodes our soul to our here aware self. And our aware self, for most of us, is coming to an expression as an ego self, as a self that is tied to the body and the emotions and the polarity, the duality of the mind. All right, and this is where all your guys' lower chakra problems come from. This is where all your emotions are being sort of discombobbled, where they get distorted, where you judge, with your mind. You basically withhold all of that because you think it's a bad emotion, or it's bad to feel this or to do this, and this is sort of here the culmination of the ego, that forms out of all our trauma and all the things, the adverse experiences that we had in the past, because it had to cope with it. So most of that, the way your ego self expresses itself is also from the past. All right, the true self is not tied to the past, guys, because if you actually go into this question that I asked you earlier, who are you truly? What is it truly that you are expressing here? What you will find is that there is a part of you that never changed. It never changed since you can consciously think. Some of you remember maybe the times before 5, but for most of us it is 5 years old, when our frontal lobe is developed enough for us to actually have this I am awareness. All right, when we begin to form our own identity. Okay, and these things that you truly are, they never really change. The way you bring this into expression, that changes with your life, with your life's experiences, with the people that you come in contact with. But what you truly want, who you truly are, never changes. And in the core of that, guys, it's the same really for all of us. You are not special in what you want. You are not different in, sort of what drives you. The only thing that is different is your choices that you've made in the past, how you want to express that. And in psychology, that's called identity or personality. And in energy work, we call this false self. All right, the false self. It's not false as in wrong. It is false because it doesn't reflect the true self. And so walking the talk and moving from ego-fulness, okay, painfulness, into truthfulness, And out of the truthfulness, we develop something like mindfulness, okay? Except for that the word mindfulness really still is very limited if you think about it, because it focuses on the power of the mind, okay, to express. And this is a higher function that we have in our brain, all right? So this is done, sort of where we begin to understand things and we can see the larger context better. But it isn't really until we recognize that it is actually the heart or the heart mind, the fusion of the mind and the heart that paves the way to becoming soulful. Soulful in the sense of recognizing that all times are now, that all places are here, that truth and light and love are the exact same energies that can carry you into this higher expression of who you truly are. The closer you can get to, what your true self actually communicates to you, the higher that expression becomes. The more truthful and integrous and loving towards yourself and others that you can become. Remember the golden rule? The golden rule applies on a soul level as well. Because ultimately we all come from the same source. And so elevating ourselves, over others or degrading ourselves, for that matter, is the same thing. Okay, it's the same thing. I either elevate myself through, lifting myself up over others, or I elevate myself through degrading others, or even degrading myself is a form of elevation. All right, by overcoming that and seeing that we're all in the same boat. And this is then the meaning for us here as a collective, moving into this really new time, this new paradigm, where anything that cannot stand in truth, whether it's a business, whether it's the pharmaceutical industry, the food industry, politics, the banking industry, all that, guys, we in our lifetime will see all that becoming restructured, rebuilt, and renewed. And within ourselves, this renewal energy has to come in through our physical first, then really learning how the emotions tie into that and how our mind propagates it and how we get caught in that loop, letting all that go, moving into our heart, all right, recognizing, learning how to discern energies, recognizing what is really true to us, and then shifting our energy accordingly, becoming an energy manager, becoming accountable for our own energy, because we recognize that our energy is ultimately connected with the energy of everybody else. And that is how we create a change. That is how we can move into more meaning, into more purpose. It isn't about the next job or the next business opportunity or the next relationship, guys. It's all about you being truthful to yourself. And I want to do a shout out to those of you who are going through tough times. A lot of you guys are losing people right now in your life. This is a time where not every soul is willing or ready to stay here. Okay, and so we see a lot of people exiting right now. Okay, this is a difficult time for you to to deal with that loss, but it's also a great opportunity for you to recognize how you've attached to all of this, and on how on the soul level, it does not matter. If you want to be connected to a person's energy, then the best way to do that is through connecting to your love for this person. Okay, and you don't have to call in their ghost or their spirit or whatever. All that is just, specialness. All that is just like sort of feeding, the fixation again. Be happy for this soul to rejoice. Okay, be happy for it. Okay, and remember that you can connect with this person that has just passed on that soul level anytime, because all places are here and all times are now. You've realized that you've been living in so much stress, and centering into the present allows you to shift and to witness. Yeah, that's the trick. That's the trick. The trick is to let go of the stress, trying to be someone you're not, or trying to follow something that is innately dysfunctional or toxic. Find the people that have the same alignment like you. Find the people that have made the same promise to their soul self, knowingly. And we all have done or made that promise to grow into our higher expression, but find the people that are aware of it. Make business with them. Make groups with them. Live with them. Love them. Cook with them. Ride with them. Dance with them. It doesn't matter. It's not all about just sexuality and, picket fence. And no, part of our life is, but the bigger part of our life, guys, the fulfillment that you are all looking for comes through working on the fulfillment of your promise to yourself, to your soul self, and with it the divine nature in all. So the trick is to recognize the divine nature in you and to not try to be different, not try to be better than divine nature, because that's an illusion of your ego. So thank you so much for your attention. I love your guys' comments and hearts and everything. So thank you so much for coming. Check out the other explainer videos here on the YouTube channel, on Facebook, articles, and so forth. This is the platform for talking and living truth. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. And I hope to see you next week.